What's going on, everybody? It's yours truly, Coach Mike Dub. We're back here with another edition of Lockdown Defense Sports Studio. And of course, it's the off season in full swing. As you know, as you've been getting hit over the head with different content throughout the last few weeks, it's time that we talk about the AFC West. And in particular, what's going on with the franchise tags, what's going on with who's coming back, the re-signings, and what's going on with the players who also may be walking. So we got a lot to get into. Each one of these teams is off and running with the off season. They all got a lot of decisions to make. So we're not going to waste any time. We're going to jump right into it. So the first thing that we want to do is take a look at the cap room. That's right. So of course, we already know some of these teams have already made some moves. So this is just ballpark figures, but it gives us a general idea of what we can expect from each team. First and foremost, let's talk about the champs, right? The AFC West champs, the defending AFC champs in general, coming off of that Super Bowl appearance. Kansas City Chiefs. Clearly, you see they're going to have to make some tough decisions. This is how much cap room that they're expected to have. Obviously, they're going to have to focus on some priority positions, which we'll talk about. They've already made some moves as far as franchise tagging some guys. Clearly, that was a huge priority for them. But they also have a lot of guys, specifically on that defensive side of the ball, that they're going to have to make some tough decisions on. I think that team is going to look very different than what we had expected them to look these past few years. And it's tough because they're a team that wins a lot. So they're going to have to make some tough decisions. And they're going to have to find guys that come in and fit into that culture, and pretty much hit that ground running. So clearly you see that there's some decisions that are going to have to be made with just a little bit of cap room, not really much that they can do within the cap at all. So some guys are definitely going to have to walk. We'll get into that going forward. Next is the exact opposite, Kansas City. Well, I won't say the exact opposite, but a team that's in a pretty good position cap wise are the Los Angeles Chargers. They're another team that's coming off a playoff appearance, coming off a pretty good season, one of their better seasons in recent memory. Obviously, Harbaugh's coming into his second year. Coordinators, everybody else is going to be rolling. They're a team that I think is going to look to add some key contributors that can come in and contribute right away, as well as sign some intricate pieces right back. So I think they're a team that's positioned to win now. They're in a good space cap wise that they can add, one or two really major guys that could come in and make a difference right away. And at the same time, like I mentioned, bring back the core of their team that got them to the playoffs last year and got them playing decent ball at a good point of the season as well. I think they have a pretty good roster overall. Clearly, they want to fill some holes, fill some gaps, but they had a good draft last year, great draft actually last year. Got some guys that came in and contributed right away. I think that they're a team that they're going to try to use that cap room to kind of get them over the hump. They got a team that's should be positioned to win within the next few years. So I think they'll try to make those moves, and they have enough money to do it at 62 mil right now, ballpark once again within the cap. There's actually a huge, I guess, elephant in the room when you think about one of the major guys on that team that's a free agent right now that we'll get into. He's has an interesting situation because he would have been a prime position for maybe someone to potentially franchise tag. Of course, I'm talking about Khalil Mack. But he has a clause in his contract which won't allow that to happen. So, good for him on that. But for the Chargers, that means that they're going to have to make a decision on what they want to do with him. If they want to use some of that cap money to bring him back, or if they want to try to strike big on some other free agents and bring some other guys in and re-sign some of their guys that are also free agents this year. Next, we have the Denver Broncos. I want to say this about the Denver Broncos. I think they're in probably one of the better positions of the teams in the AFC West right now. They don't have a lot of key contributors. They have some, but they don't have a lot of key contributors that they have to, make a lot of tough decisions about. We'll come up on that in the next few slides. But overall, I think the Broncos are in a good position as far as guys that are coming back. Bo Nix was a hit for them last year. And once you got that quarterback, obviously you got some pretty good people around him. It makes things a lot easier. I think they finally found a coach that got things running and got things pretty stable there. Sean Payton has done a great job. They got some good young wide receivers there, got a good young defense, obviously probably the best corner in the NFL. And they've, surrounded him with good defensive backs as well. other defensive backs to complement him. They're in good position. I think that they're another team that could probably look to add one or two guys to really take them over the top and, take them to that next level of being able to compete with the Bronco or being able to compete with the Chiefs, I should say. And I don't think they're that far away, to be honest. There are a few key pieces. We'll see how their picks develop and we'll see what they do with the rest of their draft picks. But I think that they're in a good position where they could possibly see, who's on the market, who's available, and maybe able to get one or two guys to kind of take them over the top. So we'll definitely see where they land with it, but they're in a pretty solid position. 38.5 mil. It's not a whole lot, but it's enough when you don't have a lot of guys that you have to make tough decisions with. And then finally, the Raiders. Raiders are in an interesting position because they have all the money in the world, but I don't see, obviously they're not the best situation right now because they haven't been winning consistently. So the guys that are in the building, do you want to bring back guys that have lost in the past, or do you want to, shake it up and try to bring in a whole new roster? They're not going to be able to bring in a whole, obviously all new guys, but it's really going to depend on, what they're looking for and what they end up doing, not only with the draft, but if at the quarterback position. I think they're a team that probably will end up spending a lot of money at that position in the offseason. Obviously, the draft and scouting is picking up, so we'll see if they find somebody that they like that may fall to them. But I think that they're a team that we could see possibly bring in a free agent, spend that money on a quarterback because you can't win without one, and clearly they don't have one. I don't think they landed in the ideal position of a draft to get who they actually want. So we'll see how that all process works out. But they're a team that has a lot of money. We'll see how they spend it. It's always interesting to see what the Raiders do. They normally never one of the teams that kind of do things the way that you think they are. So that's going to be a team that we keep an eye on. All right, we looked at the pending. We looked at the salary cap. Now we want to take a look at the pending free agents. A lot of movement that's going to be going on in this division. We talked about the Kansas City Chiefs, specifically on that defensive side of the ball. Nick Bolton, Justin Reed, they've been staples in that defense for the past few years. But also Marquise Brown. Obviously, he was battling an injury this year, but I think had he been healthy, he would have been a good sign for the Chiefs. He would have been a good addition for the Chiefs. However, towards the end of the year, we saw guys like Rasheed Rice and we saw Worthy really step into their own. And for that reason, I think they're going to have to make a tough decision. And when it comes to Marquise Brown, so we'll see what they decide with that. Same with Nick Bolton and Justin Reed, all in contract years. We talked about Khalil Mack and what the situation looks like with the Chargers. Also, Asante Samuel, who was a pretty high pick and someone who had a lot of eyes on him. He struggled within the scheme late down the season. Obviously, the Chargers were able to bring back one of their other defensive backs that they was a free agent this offseason. So we'll see what that means for Asante Samuel. And then J.K. Dobbins, who came in, had a great year at running back. Obviously, he's getting up there in age. I think he's in his late 20s. So, that's the time that you really have to start looking closely at your running backs and seeing what you want to do. Do you want to sign him to a long-term deal? Do you want to try to get him on a year-to-year, which they did last year? I don't know if that'll be an option this year as far as what JK is looking for, but we'll see how they navigate that. And then finally, the last two teams we look at, the Denver Broncos, like I mentioned before, they're in a good position as far as not too many major pending free agents, like the Chargers or like the Chiefs are looking at, but they have a few guys here and there. Cody Barton, a guy that definitely is someone they're going to have to try to figure out what they want to do with him. Javonte Williams, the running back, we started to see them kind of veer away from him at times throughout the season, which is weird because I guess just about a year ago or 2 years ago, I should say, Javonte Williams, there's a lot of eyes on him as one of the next best, running backs in the league, a guy that had a lot of potential. And then for some reason, I won't say for some reason, but it was clear that the Broncos were going to, try to work in a running back by committee there, try to see what was going on. So it's going to be interesting to see where they value him. DJ Jones, the defensive lineman, same thing. And then finally, the Raiders. They signed one of their defensive backs, pull him out, back safety. Will they team him up with Trayvon Mulrig and, keep that tandem going? Will they bring back Robert Spillane? Once again, they have all the money in the world to pretty much do what they want to do. It's just a matter of how they want to carry it. So finally, we get into our predictions. What's going to happen? First and foremost, the franchise tags. There's really only two guys in the division that we thought about, possibly receiving that tag. Obviously, the first was Trey Smith. That was a pretty much the major priority for the Chiefs this offseason. Obviously, they didn't have a lot of money that they could work with, but we know that from watching the Super Bowl and seeing how things worked out for them, that offensive line is definitely something that they had to prioritize this offseason. So, it was clear that Trey Smith, they didn't want him walking out that door. So they're going to give themselves time to find out if they can do a long-term deal with him. They got him back for another year with the tag. Or at least I expect them to be able to get him back for another year with the tag. Technically, they can't have it done officially yet, but clearly that's a priority for them. And that also affects a lot of the other teams in the division, and a lot of other teams in the league, because I know the Chargers are probably looking at him, and I know a lot of other teams are probably looking at Trey Smith. So the fact that they're able to get that done, or that's their plan going forward, I think that's a good deal for them. As far as the Chargers, the only person, like I mentioned before, that will probably even have been mentioned for a tag would have been possibly Khalil Mack. But Khalil Mack, with the stipulations in his contract, I think his last contract he signed was like a no tag clause. So I don't think that we'll see that from him this year. I don't think that they'll try to do it with Asante Samuel. So I think that, that's pretty much the only two people that I could have seen them do it with. Broncos and Raiders, I don't see anybody on their roster that, that could possibly get the tag. So we'll move on to the re-signs. Guys that we can see coming back. For the Chiefs, they're probably only going to be able to bring back one of those, big name guys or one of those really big contributors. And for money reasons, I think Wharton is probably the most efficient person for them to bring back where they can still get a lot of bang for their buck. For the Chargers, I mentioned Khalil Mack. Uh, that's going to be heavily dependent on what else is available in the market. But I do think that they will try to bring him back. He's a key playmaker. Still got some juice left in the tank, and I think they want to capitalize off of that. J.K. Dobbins, we saw a great year he had last year. I think they want to capitalize off of that as well. Greg Roman, we know how he feels about his run game. J.K. held it down last year. And finally, their defensive back, Christian Fulton. I think he's going to be on the opposite side on that corner position. We saw them bring back Molden. But I think they like Christian Fulton going to the next year. They're going to have a tough decision to make between him and Asante Samuel. I think Christian Fulton is going to get the nod. For the Broncos, Cody Barton, I can see him coming back. Obviously, great contributor at the linebacker position. And DJ Jones, I think they're going to run it back with him as well. Once again, they're a team that doesn't have to shake up too much. They'll probably try to bring in a few guys, but overall, I think they're going to be in pretty good position. I think the Raiders do bring back Spillane and also Mo Rig at safety to tighten up that defense and get some continuity going as they fill in some pieces. And then finally, we go into the resigns, right? The teams, the guys that these teams may lose out on. We talked about Marquise Brown, Nick Bolton, Justin Reed with the Chiefs. I just don't think that they have enough money to make it happen. Do they want to let all these guys go? No, but once again, you got to make some tough decisions going into the offseason. As far as the Chargers, same thing. Asante Samuel, I think that that's a guy that has struggled with the scheme, like I mentioned before, and it's just going to be pretty tough. Obviously, with injuries that also happen, it's going to be pretty tough for them to bring back all three of those DBs that we're looking at contract years. So I think Asante Samuel will probably be the odd man out. I don't think it'll be any problem for him to find a new home. But I'm not sure if it'll be in Los Angeles. Next, the Broncos, Javonte Williams. Once again, we started to see them veer away from him and find a little bit of a running back by committee throughout the season last year. I think that was just a test run to see, if they had other things in the building. And we also may see who they may have their eyes on in the offseason in the draft. Obviously, that running back position is one that's unfortunately pretty expendable. And I think that he will be the odd man out in Denver. And then finally, with the Raiders, Marcus Epps and John Jenkins, I think that the Raiders are going to start to look at younger pieces. John Jenkins is getting up there in age. Marcus Epps, we also looked at, they brought in, one of their safeties back already. And I think that they're looking at bringing another with Trayvon Moehrig, which would leave Marcus Epps as the last man out. So clearly a lot of moving and shaking that will be going on within the division. As I mentioned before, I would keep my eyes on the Broncos. I think that they're in a prime position to make something happen. The Chiefs is going to be interesting to see, what they do, how they're going to be able to navigate that cap room. But I'll never count the Chiefs out. So we'll see what happens from there. The Chargers, they're right on their heels with another talented team. Obviously, they were on the brink of, breaking through last year. So we'll see if they can add a piece or two to kind of take them over the hump. And the Raiders are going to be the Raiders. We'll see what they're going to do at the quarterback position. And based off of that, we'll probably be able to tell what's going to happen for the rest of them. But here's a little bit of a preview. We'll see how things shake up. It's going to be interesting to see. But until next time, yours truly, Coach Dub.